headed down to Acapulco. I know I'm headed down to Acapulco with the long white sands where I might have a chance. Yeah, I'm gonna head down to Acapulco.
Well, thanks for having me. With a show of hands, how many of you think of yourselves as compassionate? How many of you feel you're compassionate? Okay, well, compassion means to suffer with. And not only to suffer with somebody or some being, but to want to help. What do you think the opposite of compassion is? If you look it up in the dictionary, the opposite of compassion is tyranny. And I think that compassion is an instinctual emotion within us. We're born with it. We're born with compassion. We're made to help each other. I believe that we're all connected. But that natural instinct of compassion is slowly trained out of us. It's trained out of us in the authoritarian parenting paradigm from birth. From the moment we come into this world in our culture, we are taught to separate and meet the needs of those in power before our own needs. And the only way that compassion can really be cultivated within someone is to have it modeled. And traditional parenting does not do a very good job of modeling compassion for us. 99% of parenting experts or books or doctors, anyone giving advice on parenting on the market is focused on the authoritarian paradigm and meeting the parent's needs solely. The parent's needs for quiet, uninterrupted sleep, and above all, obedience. Obedience, compliance, and it's done with behavior modification. I'm sure you could think of times in which you've seen this for yourself on TV. If you watch Super Nanny or any of the nanny shows, for example, you'll see that the focus is on the parents' needs and how to force children to meet your needs. There's very rarely a time when the children's needs are even taken into consideration. I think you'd be surprised with how conditioned you all are, even in the space that you're in, and you're extremely evolved people. Probably some of the most evolved people that I've ever spoken to. However, you're still looking through a certain filter of looking at children's behavior. Now, you'd see a child in a grocery store somewhere, and it's really easy for you to get in that space and be like, oh, they're a total brat. Because you're focused, you've been trained to look at behavior yourselves. And because it was modeled out of us so much that we need time and support and education and how to reawaken compassion. And I believe you all can do it. I mean, if I could do it, you could do it. And there's nothing special about me that's not within you. And it was through having children that I really reawakened it. When I gave birth to my first child, I can remember the first thing the nurses told me in the hospital was not to hold him too much. That he'd get used to me responding to him and he'd manipulate me. And he would cry just to manipulate me. And I remember it was the first time I ever said to myself, that sounds so wrong. Like, how could this little being manipulate me or even have that in his mind? And it was in that instant that I began distrusting the advice of experts and turned to my son and trusted him and listened to him. Now, it's important to realize that we all have some level of healing to do on this path. And I realize that peaceful parenting to some of you is harder to come to because sometimes it means admitting that the way that you may have been raised wasn't maybe as good as some of you think. Now, I know some of you know that how you were raised was pretty screwed up, but there are some of us that have a really hard time coming to terms with the fact that we were abused and are, emotionally abused by not meeting our needs. And I think when I speak to people, a lot of you you're gonna know this deep down. I'm not necessarily telling you something you don't know. Like, I think you all on some level were born with this knowledge and I'm just reawakening it in you. And in doing so, I'm hoping to reawaken some compassion. So I'm going to show you a couple different video clips of the show Super Nanny, because I want you to see how compassion is exploited. Now, the world is waking up. It's waking up on so many levels. Evolution is happening, human evolution emotionally, and we know that something's not quite right. A lot of you are aware that spanking isn't cool. That's not good to do. That's not peaceful parenting. But you may be under the assumption that timeouts are more compassionate. So, honestly, how many of you think that timeouts are more compassionate than spanking? Show of hands. Yeah, about half. All right, well, I want to introduce you to a video that you may not have looked at in the way that I want you to, experience it now. What it's going to show is Joe Frost, the Super Nanny, she needs to actually train parents in how to be oppressive. Did you know that oppression doesn't come naturally to us as parents? That we have to be trained, just like dogs as parents, to be oppressive because we're told that's how we have to be. So you're going to see her training the parents to be oppressive, and at the same time, and these clips are hard for me. Like, I had to go through clips and find some that weren't too extreme, that I felt were really balanced. So this isn't like some extreme form of timeouts. This is the most common. But I do want you to understand that the children that you see, their needs aren't even being considered in any of these. The focus is on behavior and behavior modification. Again, the parents' needs solely. Those in power are the only ones whose needs are considered. And in this first clip, there's a little 4-year-old girl. And I want you to like try to see things through her eyes. Try to experience this video and her desperate attempt to communicate with her parents or with her mother that all she wants to do is pick out her baby sister's clothes. That's all she's asking for. Now, hitting and yelling for like a 3- and 4-year-old is a form of communication, and it's really normal, actually. 3- and 4-year-olds are babies, after all, still. They have one foot in babyhood and one foot in, being a big kid. However, there's no leeway for that. And most of the time, when I educate parents, I share that they'll say that my child's hitting me or screaming at me, and I want to bring to their attention that most of the time your children have tried to communicate with you in more peaceful ways before getting to that point. So you'll see her just kind of ask that she wants to help. And notice that the focus is on trying to control her behavior the whole time. Super Nanny's trying to train the mother to focus only on behavior, and how excruciatingly frustrating it is for this little girl to not be heard, completely ignored in her need. If you were in her shoes, or if you were doing this to your best friend or someone you loved, your partner, think about how they would respond to you.
If you don't listen, Mummy is going to put you on the naughty stool. I'm going to explain to you now the discipline of the naughty stool, okay? I want you to come down, literally, to their level. Give them eye contact, and I want you to use a low tone voice, okay? You give your children a warning first to stop the behavior. If they carry on, I want you then to walk them over and place them on their stool and say to them, you're gonna stay there now until I come and get you, and you walk away.
I'm not looking forward to experiencing some of the naughty stool episodes with Andra because she's a fighter.
It wasn't long before Andra started yelling and shouting at Mum. She really tests Barbara.
No, you may not decide for them watching. Excuse me.
Tell her to stop shouting at you. Every time she addresses you.
Shout at me like that. That is not acceptable. You shout at me again and you're going on the naughty stool. All right.
Right, on.
There you go.
On. It's not a game. This is not a game.
Not,
on the
it's
naughty,
not a game. Come
on the naughty stool.
You sit in the naughty stool until I tell you that it's okay to get up. Do you understand me?
Tell her to look at you. Andra,
Andy.
sit down. Firm voice, Barbara. Sit down, and you'll stay there because you were being very rude to Mummy. Now you stay here on the stool until Mummy comes and gets you, because that behaviour is not acceptable and it's not a game.
And I want you to feel the difficulty for that parent to do that. I can remember having Devin being told by everybody, cashiers at the grocery store, to not be kind to him. One of my husband's biggest rebellions that he would do was be kind to our kids in public. And people would always take a double take. They were pretty surprised. Now, that was a pretty mild episode. And did you notice how the girl was not even allowed to share what her needs were? Okay, so in the next clip, I just want you to understand this girl's a little bit older. She's 7. And her parents told her to clean her plate. Now, how many of you were part of the clean the plate club when you were kids? Like, how many of your parents wouldn't let you leave the table? Yep, same here. I dealt with being overweight and years of anorexia as a side effect of that, but it was more important to obey. Now, this little girl, and keep in mind that this is the more compassionate method. This is promoted as the most compassionate, peaceful, kind way to raise kids. And it's such a manipulation because it's not spanking. And so parents say that this is peaceful. And so the 7-year-old girl isn't hungry. She's trying to communicate to her parents that she's already eaten. She's not hungry. She doesn't want to clean her plate. And I want you to see what happens, all because she's not obeying. It has nothing to do with her needs. It's all about obedience, and that's the focus of parenting.
Here's your plate. Take Daddy's seat right here. Now you got you got no choice. Now you go back on the step because you're not listening to nobody.
Give her a warning.
If you don't sit down, you're gonna go on the step.
This is your warning. You sit down on the chair and you get on with eating your dinner and you listen to Daddy. Any nonsense out of you right now, you'll be going straight on that step. Do you understand me? Right, then do as you're told.
Erica was having none of it. It was going nowhere. Time for the naughty step.
You were told to do something, and now you're going on.
Remember the steps?
Because you didn't do.
Remember the steps. Take it to the step and then explain. It's all there for you. Don't talk. It's all there for you.
Erica, you were told that you needed to eat some of your dinner.
No, sit her up. Sit her up. She's being disrespectful right now.
Sit up.
This is her. This is her being babyish. Stop this right now. Now just hold her there and then just tell her.
I wasn't doing the naughty step the correct way, and if I'm not doing it the correct way, you know, it's not going to work.
Erica, you put on the step because you were told to eat, and you're not eating.
I already ate my
Come
plate.
away, come away. She's acting babyish.
Finally, Erica stayed there for 7 minutes.
Erica, come down here. Erica, come down here, please.
So the next step was to explain why she'd been put on there in the first place.
Sit up over here.
When I went to the step to speak to Erica and let her off the step, she was crying and wouldn't look up at me.
Erica, you were put on the step because you weren't eating. Okay?
I ate already. Did
Okay.
you see me?
Come here. Okay. Come here.
Could you feel the frustration and pain in that little girl? Just wants to be heard so much. What you saw is exactly how schools are treating children and exactly how parents are trained to treat children. What we're doing as peaceful parents is an extreme minority. And you wouldn't believe the negative that I get from promoting not abusing kids like this. People actually call me abusive for not controlling, saying it's permissive or hands off. Because you have to realize that those in power of us and those that controlled you were told that the only other option to control and punishments and treating children this way was permissive and hands off, and that means that your parent doesn't love you. Can you guys remember being told that I'm doing this because I love you? And this hurts me more than it hurts you? I don't doubt that it didn't hurt your parents. That was, as a parent, I can't even fathom the pain and how much parents must have to numb to train their children like dogs. I don't even think dogs should be treated this way, but that's another whole thing. But do you notice how it's very much like dog training? And so what happens when a child is treated this way? What do you think that they learned, do you think, from those two experiences?
Obedience.
Yeah? Yeah. They learn that power rules, and that when you're bigger than someone, you can force them to do what you want. They learn that their needs don't matter, and that you can force people to meet your needs. They learn all about oppression, and that is the dynamic and the authoritarian paradigm that they are living, and that someday it will be their turn to treat somebody else like that. And one other thing, a side effect of this is children learn how to lie and manipulate and cheat and steal to get their needs met, which is an interesting side effect to control. How many of you remember turning into somebody you didn't want to be because nobody listened to your needs? Maybe cheating on a test in school, or having to sneak out, or having to put yourself in the position to be, it was so conflicting with your own morals and values because you had to have your needs met when you got older in some situations. You've heard of teen rebellion. We all think it's a natural state. We all think that all teens go through rebellion. There's no such thing as teen rebellion. It's all a lie and it's all a myth. I have 2 teenagers. They've never needed to go through any of that. And I think teenagers are actually treated like terrible. What I teach as a parent educator, as a peaceful parent educator, unschooling educator, is something called partnership-based parenting. So traditionally it's the authoritarian parenting paradigm, and I teach people about partnership-based paradigm. So as I said, I'll briefly share with you that the authoritarian paradigm is meeting the parents' needs solely, the parents' needs for obedience, compliance, and everything that goes along with that. A partnership-based paradigm, like the children you see here are being raised in, it's a very different way of being. It's focusing on the needs of the adults and the children, everybody in the family equally. And it's not for the lazy parent. Punishments and rules are easy. And rules are a replacement for being there and for being present. Okay, so I'm teaching a 4-hour workshop the day after the conference. If any of you are interested, I have quite a lot of people signed up, but we can put anybody else in. I'll make room for anyone that's interested in taking it and learning more about the peaceful parenting side. This particular presentation is about reawakening compassion, and that was in regards to parenting, just the tip of the iceberg on that. The next part I'd like to talk about is aspects of animal agriculture or veganism. Now I want you guys to understand that I'm not somebody who tries to convert people into veganism. It's not my thing. I have no desire to convince you one way or the other. I ate meat for 35 years. My family ate meat. Every pregnancy, I ate meat and animal products. Veganism is fairly new to me. I've been a vegan for about 3 years. My daughter, Tiffany, is the one who supported me and educated me. She's been vegan for 6 years, and she's kind of helped our whole family along in that path. But what I'd love to share with you is you've all been lied to in a lot of ways. Now, how many of you think, I think you know where this is going, but how many of you think that free-range and cruelty-free or humanely slaughtered animals are more compassionate than like factory farming? Show of hands. I did too. And again, your compassion is being manipulated completely because people are waking up. The animal agriculture industry, they're petrified of what's happening right now with people waking up, and so they're coming up with these terms to explain what that's all about and sharing that there are cruelty-free alternatives. However, I'm going to show you this next video clip. And this is a short video. It's by my friend Emily. She has a YouTube channel that you could check out some of her stuff. And this video is really informative. And I encourage you, there is a trigger warning. I'm going to show a slide here in the beginning talking about that. I don't know how many of you have seen this type of footage. It's very quick clips. It's not as brutal as some things I've seen. What she's going to talk about is the lie regarding humanely slaughtered or cage-free, cruelty-free animal products. I really would encourage you to watch this. I know sometimes it's really hard to see. When I first saw this kind of thing, I was pretty sad and pretty wrecked from seeing it. But ask yourself, if it's not good enough for your eyes, how can it be good enough for your stomach?
Let's talk about some important buzzwords that you hear around the animal products industry. Humane, cruelty-free, cage-free, free-range, organic. Let's take a moment to look at what these terms actually mean. I'm going to defer to James Levesque and Jenny Stein's site, humanemyth.org, which states, such labels create a false and misleading impression on the minds of the public, who would be both horrified and disgusted, were they to actually see everything that happens to the animals whose lives are exploited and cut short in order to create these products. Common farming exemptions, known as CFEs, make legal any method of raising farmed animals so long as it's commonly practiced within the industry. Farmers, meaning corporations, have the power to define cruelty. If the industry adopts a practice like hacking off unwanted appendages with no painkillers, for example, it automatically becomes legal. Let's talk about the happy cows that our dairy comes from. All forms of dairy farming involves a person inserting his or her arm into the cow's rectum in order to position the uterus, and then forcing an instrument into her vagina. The restraining apparatus used is commonly called a rape rack. Cows are forced year after year to go through an endless cycle of pregnancies, only to have their calves immediately taken away from them. After just 4 to 6 years, dairy cattle are considered spent and are slaughtered for pet food and fertilizer. Free of this exploitation and slaughter, cows can live 25 years or more. All male calves are of no use to the dairy industry, and they are sent to a veal-producing operations or directly to auctions where they're sold and slaughtered when they're just a few days old. What about cage-free eggs? Laying hens are killed when their production population declines, typically within 2 years. If allowed to live free of exploitation and slaughter, chickens can live 10 years or more. Hens used for egg production come from hatcheries, where male chicks are killed immediately after hatching. Each year, hundreds of millions are suffocated or ground up alive to produce fertilizer or feed. Even small poultry farms rely on industrial hatcheries. But it's free range. In the pointed words of Jonathan Safran IV, applied to meat, eggs, dairy, and every now and then even fish, the free range label is bullshit. It should provide no more peace of mind than all natural, fresh, or magical. I could keep a flock of hens under my sink and call them free range. If we're buying these products because we think that the animals are well treated, we are greatly mistaken. No matter how free range, organic, and grass-fed, cattle have their horns cut off and their testicles cut out of their scrotums, and many are branded with sizzling hot iron. Pigs on organic farms often have their tails chopped off and their ears notched. Chickens on organic farms usually have part of their sensitive beaks cut off, causing acute pain and often death. None of these animals are given any painkillers. The animals who don't die on the farm are shipped to the same slaughterhouse used by the factory farms. They are hung upside down and their throats are cut, often while they are still conscious and struggling to escape. Some are still conscious when they're forced into scalding hot water or when their bodies are hacked apart. Harold Brown, a former beef farmer, says, "I can tell you as a former farmer, in my experience, there is no such thing as humane animal products, humane farming practices, humane transport, or humane slaughter." But isn't all of this a necessary evil? And shouldn't we support any efforts that try to make it a little less evil? This is the concept that acts or behaviors formerly considered to be immoral become virtuous when it done with the intent of displacing one form of abuse with a kinder, gentler form of the same abuse. Does being confined for years in a small wire cage hold more suffering than being crowded together with thousands of others in a dark, filthy shed? Is one form of abject misery really better than another form of abject misery? In his landmark novel 1984, George Orwell states, "Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them." Picture one Southern belle saying to another, "Oh, well, I only use free-range slaves, and they pick organic cotton." In his article, Invasion of the Movement Snatchers, James Levesque says, "There is a reason why human rights groups do not develop or endorse humane methods of torturing and executing political prisoners, and why children's rights advocates do not collaborate with the international pornography industry to develop standards and special labeling for films that make compassionate use of runaway teens. To do such things is to introduce moral ambiguity into situations where the boundaries between right and wrong must never be allowed to blur. To be the agent of such blurring is to become complicit oneself in the violence and abuse. The most logical way to really look at the validity of these terms is to put yourself in the place of the recipients. I'm gonna rape you up the ass, but don't worry, I'll put on Barry Manilow and use organic lube. I'm gonna knock you up and steal your baby. I'm gonna take your male children, and I'm either gonna put them in a crate where they can't move and kill them when they're only a couple days old, or I'm just gonna put them directly into a grinder. But don't worry, while I do it, I'll tell them that they're special. I'm gonna artificially breed you and bring you into this world for the sole purpose of killing you while you're a child and profiting from your death. Even though I'm gonna kill you a decade or two before your life expectancy, I'll be sure to do so humanely and cruelty-free."
To me, the non-aggression principle is a really holistic thing for me, and it grows in ever-widening circles. I don't think I'm ever done on my journey with applying it. I don't. You apply it to one area of your life and it naturally just grows. Compassion grows as you heal from your own upbringing. And healing naturally happens when you can really tune into these instincts and reawaken what's deep inside of you. Compassion being one of them. The more compassionate you are, the more you want to be compassionate, and you just naturally evolve. It's in your awareness that you grow. And, this is a short time to share about both of these topics, so I'm just bringing you just some information, the tip of the iceberg of two things that are really, really passionate for me to talk about: children's rights and animal rights. And I like to think of myself as being a voice for the voiceless in our culture. So you've learned about true compassion, and you've learned how to live with true integrity, bringing the non-aggression principle to new levels of awareness for you. How you go and apply it is up to you at this point. I just really wanted you to be informed about what you're supporting and advocating for. I've had so many people tell me that they never really thought or pictured themselves as having children until they learned this way. So no matter what you need support with, there's a lot of people here that can support you in your journey through parenting or through becoming vegan or vegetarian or whatever else feels best to you. So when you leave here today, I really hope you can make more compassionate choices. You can choose to be a child's voice and oppose authoritarian parenting practices disguised as compassionate forms of parenting. You can live peaceful parenting and encourage others to do the same. You can choose not to support cruelty of all forms of animal agriculture and stop swallowing the lies that line the pockets of big corporations and government. You can choose to get fully behind every area of your life with compassion, and not just the areas that happen to be convenient for you. In short, you can evolve in new directions and live in the health and integrity of a higher standard of compassion that will help change the world. Thank you.
On a beach bar, water beneath the Mexican sky. Drink some margaritas by a string of blue lights.
By the 21st century, the statists had taken over the world. After 9/11, the savage union of the war on terror and the war on drugs squelched the last flickers of freedom. Central banking-backed wars raged. Violence, imprisonment, and theft had become the norm. Not many could see any other way. Hope vanished. But then, when things looked their darkest, something happened. A surprise, and just in time. From the valleys, fjords, and suburbs rose the anarchists. From the cities, factories, and the dark web came the anarcho-capitalists. And from every other nook, corner, cranny, and drum circle, the voluntarists. Some said it was too little, too late. The war had already been lost. You can't change the system, they cried. And the anarchists answered, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. One rule to heal the world, one rule that binds them, one rule sets their moral compass and aligns them. The N-A-motherfucking-P. And with that, they gather again, as they do every year, in Acapulco, Mexico, this coming February for the 3rd annual Anarchapulco. Speakers include Larkin Rose, Jeffrey Tucker, Jeff Berwick, Adam Kokesh, Milo Yiannopoulos, Lauren Southern, Luke Radowski, Julia Toriansky, Roger Ver, Rick Falkfinger, Dayna Martin, Judd Weiss, Max Egan, Josie Wales, That Guy T, Anarchy Girl, Sasha Daygame, Barry Cooper, Mark Victor, Trace Mayer, Ian Freeman and Mark Edge, Rosalind Ross, Tim Moen, Dan Dix, Dale Brown, Christopher David, Stephanie Murphy, Derek J. Freeman, Derek Brose, and many, many more. The headline musical act will be Eric July and Backwards. In and around the event will also be the Dollar Vigilantes Internationalization and Investment Summit, Change Media University, and the world's largest ayahuasca ceremony held by Barry Cooper, Ayahuascapulco. Plus, Terry Brock's Fund Your Freedom entrepreneurial course, Adam Kokesh's homesteading workshop, Sasha Daygame's Anarchy in Relationships course, Dayna Martin's Free Your Family workshop, and much, much more. And it will all be held the last week of February 2017 in Acapulco, Mexico at the 5-star Mundo Imperial Resort and Convention Center. Go to anarchapulco.com to stake your place in history. The world might just never be the same. Evacuate the state. Brave the future.